Post colors. Please join me in Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2. Please stay standing for the national anthem.
There's a couple other people I'd like to mention. Stan and Eleanor Tracty, Karen Jones, Wayne Sherry. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous. Marty, on behalf of the Historical Society, I'd like to present you with this floral piece. Just so here we go. If you'd like to stand. Karen Jones, we'd like you to stand and come forward and receive your bouquet of flowers for all your hard work and dedication to make this day and tomorrow possible. Thank you. Jessica? It's nice to have you over. Mr. Sherry. Please come forward. On behalf of the Historical Society, your friends and co-workers, we want to thank you and your wife Karen for this bouquet.
As we try to bring you some of the early heritage, I'd like to ask you for a moment to visualize this vast area that comprises Marshall and Medina townships, what it was like in 1837. Most of the lands at that time were covered with a moderate growth of different varieties of oak, interspersed with hickory, ash, and basswood. Near the center of the township, the site that is now Marshall consisted of 500 acres of beautiful prairie openings. The remainder of the township consisted of bur oak openings, interspersed with some of the finest marshlands in the state. It was into this beautiful place that the first settlers came. Here to tell us about those early days is Tabitha Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Tracty, for inviting me to your sesquicentennial celebration. I am so honored to be here. My name is Tabitha Bird. I'm from New York. Actually, my story is not so much about me as it is about my two boys. And my story begins sometime before the event that you are celebrating. It begins long before Wisconsin became a state. It goes back to the time when Wisconsin was only becoming a territory. You know, life in New York was pleasant. It was comfortable. You would have thought my boys would have been happy and content to live out their lives in a place like that. But they had a vision. They had a dream. They came to me and they said, we think we'd like to head out to that new territory called the Territory of Wisconsin. And I said, Wisconsin sounds like a bunch of wolves howling. And they said, oh no, it sounds like adventure and excitement. And I said, but I heard that if you go to Wisconsin, sometimes the thermometer goes below zero. That's a bunch of nonsense, they said. And of course, I didn't believe that either. But my boys were still determined to come. Now, about that same time, back in Wisconsin, things were happening. You remember the old Northwest Territory of 1789 and how that was divided into the Michigan Territory, which was pretty big. And finally, that was subdivided into what was going to be called the Territory of Wisconsin. It was quite a bit larger than your state of Wisconsin is now. So that when they decided that they were going to have a meeting of all the legislators, they chose a place that they thought was central to the area. They chose a little town called Belmont. And the legislatures came to Belmont. Among the people that were there was my older son, Augustus A. And another person who was there was a man whose name was John Doty. Now you probably know about John Doty. You probably remember him quite well. I never had the opportunity to meet John Doty, but I heard a lot about him, and I have some thoughts about him. I'm not sure whether he was a very, very astute politician, or whether he was just a fast talker. Or maybe he truly was a man with a vision, because he came to that legislature and he said, I have a dream. I have a vision of the capital of this territory of Wisconsin, and I know it will be a state someday. And I have a vision of it not here in Belmont, but up in the Four Lakes country, he said. There's a little spot, it's an isthmus between two lakes. There's a little bit of a hill there, and it would be a perfect site for a capital. Well, his enthusiasm was caught by all those legislators, and they said, this is a good idea. And they all voted to build the capital of the territory of Wisconsin in the new city of Madison. On a little hill, kind of surrounded by some swampland. But nobody ever told those legislatures that the only building in the city of Madison was that one log cabin. And nobody ever mentioned that Mr. Doty just happened to own most of the land around there. But the important thing is that my Augustus got the contract to build the Capitol. Now, it wasn't that fancy Capitol you have there now, but it was going to be a pretty impressive building. And my boys back in New York, they said, we're going to go. We're going to help Augustus build that Capitol. What's a mother to do? Boys will be boys, you know. So I said goodbye and let them go. Down the Erie Canal, across the lakes to Milwaukee, and then, rude awakening for them. They got to Milwaukee and no roads. Trees, swamp, mosquitoes. Oh, 10 days it took him. And they thought it would never end. And then, just about when they're at their wits' end, they come over this little hill, and there's 500 acres of prairie. Oh, it was a beautiful sight. Little crooked river running through it. The Nonisha, the Indians called it. And Andrew looked at Zenas, and Zenas looked at Andrew, and they said, I think this is the place where we want to be. Zenas said, we're only about 20 miles from that new city of Madison. He said, I'm going to build a boarding house. Because obviously if people are going to go from Milwaukee to Madison, they'll need to stop here before they make that last day's journey. They'll want to freshen up and look good for all the important people in Madison. And his brother Andrew said, I can see a whole big settlement here on this beautiful prairie. I'm going to build a sawmill because people are going to need wood and lumber. They're going to have to build houses and furniture. I'm going to make my fortune. And with a gleam in their eyes, those boys set to work. The boarding house went up, the sawmill went up, and every day they sat there and they said, today we're one day closer to realizing all our dreams and making our fortune too, of course. And so, the summer progressed. The buildings were almost completed. All they needed was the machinery for the sawmill. So the three of them, Andrew and Zenas, and a friend of theirs, Aaron Petrie, who had been helping them, got into their wagon and they set out for the journey to Madison because they could get some of their equipment there. I'm sorry. This part, I can hardly, even after all these years, I can hardly bear to tell you what happened next. It was just so awful because while they were gone, the prairie began to burn. And it burned and there burned and there wasn't anything to stop it. And it burned for days. My boys hadn't been in any hurry to get back. They were visiting Augustus, obviously. And then they came back with their wagon and they came over that hill over there on the west there. What did they see? It was burned, it was smoke, it was ashes, it was nothing. It was simply ruin. They made their way to what was left of their boarding house and what was left of their sawmill, and there was nothing they could save. Not a thing. So they loaded up their wagons with what they could find, and they turned their wagons to the west and never looked back. Because looking back would have reminded them of the ruins of their dreams, the ruins of their hopes, and the ruins of all their fortunes. And the place was called Burns Ruins.
1839 in Section 7, just a few miles west of Marshall. This settlement was made by Volney Moore, Eliezer Moore, and Henry S. Clark. They began to build a dwelling house, and in the spring of the next year they moved their families here from Milwaukee County to their new home. Here in their crude cabin of logs, they lived in solitude for almost 2 years. The nearest house was at Lake Mills. The closest neighbor to the west was in Madison. Mrs. Moore had been heard to say, for 1.5 years after coming here, I never saw a face of a white woman except my daughter. 1842 marked the beginning of a larger community. Some of those early pioneers were Charles Wakeman, Moses Page, Martin Bostwig, Daniel Cross, Judge Reuben Smith, Sardine Muzzy, Willard Cole, Peter Seifert, and Asa Cross. Many came from Medina County, Ohio, which no doubt explains why the name Medina was given to this area when the precinct of Sun Prairie was divided into the townships of Bristol, York, and Medina in the late 1840s. Remember the ruins that Mrs. Bird was talking about? Well, in 1845, the last remaining wall of the old building crashed to the ground. In that same year, Zenas Bird sold 6/80 of his land he still owned to John Douglas. Mr. Douglas will tell you what happened next.
I'm John Douglas, and I'm really glad that I was able to purchase the 680s, or 480 acres, from Zenisberg in 1845. And then, like a phoenix from the ashes, Bird's Ruins began to come back to life, and new citizens began arriving. Now, I sold a section of my holdings in Section 10 to Watson G. Thomas, and he in turn sold the same land to Jonathan F. Seeley. Now, Dr. Seeley was the first physician in Bird's Ruins, and I'm really glad he came along. I had started to build a sawmill and had run a little short on funds. Now, building my little 2-room frame house went pretty quick, but building a sawmill, now that's another matter. So Dr. Seeley opened an office and then finished the sawmill in 1847. And my home was the site of some significant firsts in Bird's Ruins. For instance, the first religious meeting was held in my home. And G.W. Day opened a store in a room of my home and brought in the first barrel of whiskey to Bird's Ruins. As a matter of fact, in one room of my house, George Smith dispensed sermons, and across the hall in another room, G.W. Day dispensed whiskey. Now, we didn't really keep tabs to see who had the most business. G.W. Day was quite a shrewd operator. It's been said when he drew off a gallon of whiskey, he replenished it with a gallon of water. I suppose the patrons were feeling pretty good and didn't notice the weakness of the brew. However, when winter came, the barrel froze solid. And whiskey drinking was then curtailed for the duration of the winter. Well, I guess I better get back to Bird's Ruins to see what all the excitement is today.
The first school in Bird Ruins was taught during the summer by Susan Tracy in Judge Smith's house in 1845. The next year, the first dam on the Monashaw River was constructed. This was a sign of great progress and an important event. The first church organizations in the village were established under the auspices of the Close Communion Baptist. During the winter of 1846 and 1847, they held their meetings conducted by Elder Green at the house of William Parsons in Bird's Ruins. A large revival followed, and the excitement was so great that they were still baptizing by the moonlight at midnight. In the summer of 1847, a short time after the Baptists held their first meeting, the Methodists organized with the help of C.W. Thornton. Services were held at the home of W.R. Shepherd and conducted by Reverend Allen. He was a circus minister that resided in Portland. 2 years later, they utilized a red brick school at the foot of North Beebe Street. New settlers kept arriving. Among those who settled in Medina in 1846 were Lewis Morrill, Jesse M. Smith, Silas Morey, Thomas Hart Sr., Joseph Hart, C.W. Weeks, George Llewellyn, and many others. The next year, W.E. Pearsons, A.M. Hanchett, and Urban Parsons arrived. Mr. Hanchett purchased the property that belonged to John Douglas and established a general store at Bird's Ruins. Mr. Hanchett played an important part in this village. We're fortunate to have him here with us today.
Hello. I'm Mr. Hanchett, as you were told. I came here in 1846. I bought some land from John Douglas in Section 10, which probably involves, I think it was this piece here, going over to what is Hubble Street now, it was Depot Street at one time. And it caught just one little corner of Main Street down there. So I put up a store and sold anything I could get my hands on. I made a little money. Well, things went along pretty good. The only trouble is we didn't have very good mail service here. Mail service was started by the U.S. government already. We had 2 stamps out, a 5-center and a 10-center. But the nearest post office was down Lake Mills. But I had a very good friend called Urban Parson. He always wanted to go to Lake Mills to pick up the mail. But I found later on he was more interested in female. But he kept going for him anyway. Well, and it wasn't long. He did get a little tired of going. So we got a petition, and we got our own post office here in town. And who do you think was the first postmaster? Now, you know, all this land was surveyed much earlier than in 1837. It was very much ahead of that time. So these people that came here, they could actually buy land in sections, and it was laid out by chains and links. But in those days, that's all they had to measure by. Well, one day the legislature of Madison decided they want all these counties and townships named. Well, they named one Dane County, and they named the other one Medina County. I was out there, and I didn't have much to say, you know. Well, anyway, things were going good, so I decided to buy some more land from Douglas. Now, this was in land, section 15, which included the part of Bird's Ruins, below there, which you probably can't see here. That was most of Main Street and then off to the south. And that was where practically all the buildings were that burned at the time of the fire. So I built a grist mill down on the other end. That's the same one that stands there now. In fact, that was built very good. It was still standing. So then I moved the sawmill down there too, and I helped rebuild the dam, so it had more power at the dam. And I had a pretty good life here. Well,
Mr.
yes.
You can't conclude your remarks without mentioning the most exciting thing that happened in Bird's Ruins. Don't you remember in 1848 when President Polk signed the document that dissolved the territory of Wisconsin and made us the great state of Wisconsin? The 30th state in the Union and the 30th star on the flag. Wasn't that a thrilling day for all of Wisconsin and especially for Bird's Ruins?
Everybody except me. You know. That Bird's Ruin. Now, I think that is a poor excuse for a town, and something has got to be done about that.
If any one person could be credited with bolstering the economy and the welfare of the community during this era, it would have to be Mr. Hanchett. And the community recognized this. He was instrumental in luring many badly needed businesses to the village, including a blacksmith shop and the grist mill that he had mentioned. In honor of his public service, the name Bird's Ruins gave way to Hanchettville in 1849. Life was not easy for these first settlers. There were no roads in the town, with the exception of a wagon track cleared through the timber. Even when the roads were cleared, the roadway still had many stumps. The wagons rolled along slowly over huge rocks, which were never moved. There were no bridges over the streams, and the routes were often lengthened as people looked for a practical fording place. Over such roads by the means of ox teams, the settlers traveled to take their products to Milwaukee, some 70 miles distant. Groceries and other necessary articles of merchandise had to be transported back by the same tedious method. Before the village of Hanchettville had a blacksmith shop, the closest one was at Lake Mills. Settlers used to put their log chains into a bag, slinging it over their back, carrying them over the rough and muddy roads all the way to Lake Mills to get them mended. There must have been much joy when the first anvil and a pair of bellows were brought into the town by Lewis Stone. The first blacksmith shop was opened up by his nephew Jesse Stone and J. Thomas under a large bur oak tree where they did their work out in the open air. In 1852, Charles Wakeman purchased a wagon for $90 and sold number one winter wheat at 30 cents a bushel to pay for it. Now here's a question for you. How many bushels of wheat did Mr. Wakeman have to sell to pay for this wagon? And how many seasons did it take him to raise that much cash? Just think about it. Progress continued. In 1852 and 1853, a plank road was projected and built from Watertown to Hanchettville. At last, this isolated area would be connected to the great business world. Things were looking up indeed. Many little villages sprung up along the plank road and were the scene of bustling activity and enterprise. But in the midst of all this progress, tragedy struck. Tragedy in the form of a dreaded and deadly illness, typhoid fever. This called for the services of a doctor, and Dr. Beebe heard the call.
On 1853, a typhoid epidemic went through the neighborhood here, and well, let's explain medicine. At best, it was primitive, maybe, to be aware. There's no CAT scans, no X-rays, no antibiotics, no Viagra. Not even aspirin. Well, I was living between here and Sun Prairie at a place called Heckman's Corner, and heard about the epidemic raging here. And so I moved here and took up practice. And I did what I could. That's basically what it came down to. And it turned out it worked out quite well for me anyways. I built a house at 122 West Main, which is still standing today. It's the house next to Jimmy John. And I used the building to the east of it as my office. You'll see this garage. Okay? And I was really honored at a point when the people of Hanchettville named the street after me, apparently for my doing. Well, I should only stay a minute. I have some patients that could get a little teed off without me.
In 1856, an idea began to circulate. Wouldn't it be a good idea if the railroad came through this village? The proposition of building a railroad from Watertown to Madison was widely discussed. And about half of the inhabitants were in favor of settling the town with a debt of $25,000 for the purpose of assisting this project, while the remainder were opposed. At a special meeting held, the railroad advocates were defeated by 2 votes. Had this railroad been accepted at this time, the railroad would have been established just east of the park here, crossing Hubble Street in about the 500 block. A railroad cut had already was already put in parallel to West Park Drive, and a river crossing was being contemplated. Plans were for the depot to be located down by the present Evergreen Mall, but lacking just 2 votes, the project floundered. The idea did not die, however, and in 1859, the Madison, Watertown, and St. Paul Company succeeded in acquiring the number of pledges necessary to begin the construction of the Madison Branch Road, locating a depot at Hansетtville and another one at Deansville. Property owners anticipated great results from this effect of this road. Property values would go up, the village of Hansetchet would grow, and everyone would prosper. The Madison Branch Road would proceed through Deansville to Sun Prairie and into Madison. The first proposed railroad would have bypassed Sun Prairie in preference to Burke. There was one man in particular who had a vision of the future, who knew how vital the railroad was to the existence of a community, and who worked tirelessly to bring the railroad to Hansettville. His name was Howard. Little is known about this Mr. Howard, who was so instrumental in bringing the railroad to Hansettville. Matter of fact, we don't even know what his first name was. But residents of Hansettville were so jubilant over the completion of the railroad that they overwhelmingly agreed to change the name of Hansettville to Howard City to honor this railroad man. Thus, the third name Marshall was to be known as Howard City came into existence. In 1859, the village was plotted under the name of Howard City. Unfortunately, the expected wave of prosperity from the railroads never materialized. The railroad company soon defaulted in its payments and went into insolvency, long years before the line was actually completed. This probably explains why we know so little about Mr. Howard. Mr. Hansett, who had through the years acquired quite a bit of property in and around the village and had a fine reputation as well, was one of those who was caught in this disaster. On the eve of Civil War, Mr. Hansett found himself property poor, and he was obliged to sell his substantial land holdings to a pair of Madison real estate brokers, William E. Porter and Samuel Marshall. Mr. Porter and Mr. Marshall were educated men, businessmen who knew when to seize an opportunity.
Since coming here to Howard City, I've seen some mighty fine land here along the Monashaw River.
Yes, Sam, I think that we made a wise decision in purchasing this territory. The river down here, I think, can be real beneficial for us and make us very prosperous. The land is fertile, and there's all kinds of trees around here. Sam, why don't you look over some of the properties that we've acquired over here? I'll tell these folks a little bit about myself. It's nice to see you all here. My name is William Porter, and I was born here, on April 18th in 1806 in a town called Atlantic, Massachusetts. I decided to come out here recognizing and remembering how proud I was of my grandfather who fought with the Continental Army with George Washington. Isn't that incredible? So I have a pretty great past to be proud of. Well, I moved out here with my only son, Henry Porter, in 1856. And we settled out here in a town called Burke, which is about 14 miles west of here. It was a nice area and territory. But I was really interested in real estate. And I was interested in big real estate. And so I thought it would be best if I moved to Madison, open an office there, and then I could sell the real estate that was in the Madison proper, and also in the smaller towns and villages around here. And thus, I met Samuel Porter. In 1860, my good friend and I joined together, and we came out here and we purchased this piece of land. Sam, I'd like to check over some of these papers that we have here. Maybe you could tell yourself about Samuel Marshall.
Well, I'd be glad to. I was born in Concordville, Pennsylvania in 1820. All of our family had lived in this area in Pennsylvania since the time of William Penn. been there quite a while. My father was a farmer, farmed quite extensively, and so at an early age, we learned the value of hard manual labor. I attended school in the early years in Concordville. At 13, I was put in a boarding school in Westville, Pennsylvania, in Chester County. I finished my education at the Bennett Academy in Philadelphia. When I was 16, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, my father apprenticed me to a hardware merchant in Wilmington, Delaware. Upon completion there, I spent the next 5 years working for a hardware firm in Philadelphia. The West had always been quite an attraction to me, and so upon a journey into the Western Territories, I searched around and could find absolutely nothing that would interest me in this area. And so returned back again to the hardware business in Philadelphia. But this didn't seem to satisfy my longing, and about 3 years later decided to make a second journey west. We traveled, after a brief time in Pittsburgh, we traveled west and ended up in Milwaukee. I only stayed one day in this town that was to be my future home before returning back again to Philadelphia. But I did find that I had found my life's work. I had made a decision and a firm commitment to pursue banking. I wanted to be a banker. So the following spring, returned back to Milwaukee again. And it was 2 years later, much to my good fortune, that I met Mr. Charles Ilsley. And we formed a partnership, the Marshall and Ilsley Bank. About 3 years after this, against my better judgment, but which he talked me into, we did form a bank in Madison. And I was the president and the operating officer of the bank in Madison, and made many trips between Madison and Milwaukee, and as ever the need would arise. It was in Madison that we met William Porter, and we were involved in many real estate deals in the bank, and it was with him that we seized the opportunity to purchase the territory, to purchase the property here that we had spoken to previously. So that's how we got to meet Mr. Porter and become engaged with the property here in Howard City.
You know, Sam, it's been a few years now since I moved out here from Massachusetts. And I've been thinking that I'm going to go back to the area that I came from. And I've been making some plans to move back to Brighton, Massachusetts, pretty close to Boston. And if my health holds up, I'll probably go to Jacksonville, Florida in the wintertime and spend my time in Brighton during the rest of the year. But before I leave, Sam, I want you to be in full agreement on an idea I've got. And that idea is that we name this community in the center of this property we bought, Marshall, after you. Would you be willing to consider that?
Well, that's a very generous offer on your part, and I would very readily agree to it if you would agree that we name one of the streets William and an intersecting street Porter. So that way folks can remember us both.
I would be very happy to agree to that. Maybe someday they'll show a skit about us. Well, from this day on, Sam, from this date in 1861, this community will be called Marshall. I'm going to be leaving soon, and I'm going to have my son, I think you met, Henry.
Yes,
William
I met
Henry Porter.
Yes.
He's going to be in charge of all the properties that we have here, and I'd like him to be your partner to
Very
move
fine.
on to develop this great territory.
That would be great. Well, welcome aboard. Thank you, Sam. golly, I would like to have you explain a little bit about your situation. Yes, very much.
Well, I was born in Winnet, Essex County, Massachusetts, on November 10th, 1830. My father knew the importance of a good education, and after using common schools, I finished my schooling at Lawrence Academy, Great Massachusetts. I came to Wisconsin with my father in the spring of 1856, and I became a permanent resident of this community at the same year. After my father, William F. Porter, returned to Massachusetts, 1865, I took over his property in partnership with Sam Marshall till 1880. I also was the sole owner of a farm on Madison Street. I called it Maple Avenue Farm because of the large groves of maple trees along both sides of Madison Street. As the village grew, I became the owner of Marshall Roller Mills. I installed steam power and large water turbines, making it one of the most modern in the state. This brought a lot of attention to our small community. Inasmuch as I had the mill and the ice business on Mill Square, I decided to move my main farming operation there to the same area. Around 1908, I built a new home, corner of Depot Street, Hubble, and Highway 19 with barn and other outbuildings on the east side of the street near the river and the mill. But my father always said that a good businessman has a responsibility to be a good citizen. And I enjoyed getting involved in other interests in the village. I was privileged to serve as postmaster marshal for 12 years, was chairman of the township of Medina for 13 years, even became a member of the Wisconsin Assembly in 1890 and 91. I was one of the founders of the Marshall Academy and treasurer for 3 years. I was one of the organizers of the Bank of Marshall and its first president. I was in business for 40 years, and I just loved every minute of it. Well, Sam, I enjoyed working with you the past few years. Now that you will be going to Milwaukee full time, I suppose I will not be seeing much of you anymore.
Well, I'm sure we'll cross paths and we'll keep in touch.
All right.
We'll keep in touch.
So the village became Marshall, and in the aftermath of the Civil War, it continued to grow. The Methodist Church was erected at 124 South Beebe Street at a cost of $3,000 in 1869. This was a fine wooden structure that was dedicated in February of that year by Reverend Ernest Fallows. The Baptist Church was built the same year and was dedicated in February by Reverend O.G. Hogue, its cost being a trifle over $3,000. This church was built on South Beebe Street, where St. Mary's Hall is located today, but in less than 20 years the congregation had disbanded. When Father Hess from Waterloo began a Catholic mission in Marshall in 1908, he conducted Mass in this building, and eventually the church acquired the property. The German Methodist Church, about 1.5 miles south of Marshall, was erected in 1876 at a cost of $1,500. We need to back up just a bit in history and talk about the terrible event of the century, the Civil War that raged throughout our nation. It touched even this small community in southern Wisconsin and the lives of many that lived here. Shortly after the first shell exploded on Charleston's Fort Sumter in the spring of 1861, Captain Bradford Hancock, who was Marshall's postmaster in 1861 to 68, organized a company of volunteer infantrymen from Marshall and the surrounding area. Over 80 men heeded his call, and when Captain Hancock organized his company, another 14 were drafted later. 24 of Hancock's volunteers and conscripts never returned to Marshall, being buried under the war-ravaged earth at Chickamauga, Vicksburg, Bull Run, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, or a score of other bloody civil battlefields. Among the Civil War soldiers was Joshua Knapton. Joshua survived the war and returned to Marshall and his family. His sister Sarah Knapton is with us here today.
My name is Sarah. I am a sister of Joshua Knapton. I would like to tell you the history of the Knapton name and a bit about my brother. Before we settled in Medina, we made our home by the village called Knapton. It was 3 miles west of York, England. The Knapton name dates back as far as William the Conqueror and is mentioned in the Domesday Book of Records. The earliest book is 1086 and our land was referred to as Westco Hill. My parents, William and Jane, had 12 children. I am number 6 and Joshua was number 11. My brother was named Joshua Carnley Knapton because he was named after a brother that died of drowning at the age of 2. We left England, parents, 9 children and 1 grandchild, on an immigrant ship called the Oregon, headed for America. After 5 weeks and 3 days, we landed in New York. We sailed up the Hudson River to Albany, then by canal to Buffalo by the way of the Great Lakes to Milwaukee, which was a 6-day voyage. 70 miles from Milwaukee, we purchased the Nathan Larrabee's 160 acres for $50, and then also had to pay the government $200 for the same land because the Larrabees had no claim to the land. We set out for our new land, a 3-day journey from Milwaukee. These were stormy days and most of our articles were ruined. We hauled lumber from Milford to build our house. Later, we were driven off of the land by the Larrabees. My family then bought 40 acres in Section 7, town of Medina, from Daniel Moore, living there until December of 1852. We were able to reclaim the Larrabee property and moved in the winter. Our father died in 1858, so my brother Joshua was responsible for looking after my mother and me. I was an invalid as a result of a terrible fright as a child and lost my power of speech. As well, my sister Mary also lived with us and helped care for me. The Civil War was raging, so my brother enlisted for Civil War duty in 1864 at Madison, along with his nephew Robert, who was Mary's son. He was taken prisoner at the Battle of Crossroads near Shreveport, Louisiana on April 8, 1864, and was a prisoner of war for 8 months. Finally, Joshua mustered out October 9, 1865. Upon returning home, he purchased 100 acres of land adjoining the Knapton homestead and 60 acres from the homestead. Josh settled back into farming and enjoyed raising sheep. He also enjoyed fishing whenever he could get away. He was very knowledgeable about farm machinery and always claimed there was no piece of machinery that he couldn't improve on. He was also very interested in local politics. He served as supervisor in Medina and was much interested in town affairs. I was always so proud when I heard people commenting on how upright and honest he was. Joshua had a kind and generous heart and was always very good to me. He loved music and would play his fine cabinet organ for hours while I listened. Joshua's stories were another thing I enjoyed. He read lots of books and never tired of retelling these stories. Joshua chose to remain a bachelor all his life. He was the last of the original settlers in 1848 and lived to the age of 91. He was Marshall's last surviving Civil War veteran. My brother was very special to me, and I thank you for letting me share his life with you.
By the mid-1860s, the need for additional educational opportunities became apparent, and the citizens of Marshall sought to establish a private academy of the type that the New England citizens of Marshall, the type of settlers had introduced in Wisconsin. The state legislature approved the incorporation of academy in Marshall in 1861, and the villagers, behind the energetic leadership of E.B. Bigelow, proceeded to set up a joint stock incorporated as the Marshall Academy. The academy was completed in 1866 at a cost of $14,000. It was a grand brick building, 3 stories tall, and its fame spread wide and far. The institution opened in January of 1867, with most of the first term 80 students from Marshall and nearby areas, but some came as far away as from New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Minnesota. The academy operated almost 20 years as a private school. And then on August 24th of 1885, the local school district purchased the property, and the following year the Medina Free High School was established in the same building. In the 1870s and 1880s, many new businesses sprung up in Marshall. In 1873, the Marshall Hotel was built by Edward Bigelow, who had been instrumental in starting the academy. He ran the hotel and had a livery to serve 40 horses. In 1875, Peter Van Loan bought the Ripson Brothers blacksmith shop on Pardee Street, and E.J. McPherson had practiced the smith's trade on the lower Main Street, and he did a brisk business building wagons and buggies until he sold the enterprise to John Deppy in 1885. In 1887, Marshall had 7 thriving grocery stores, including one by J.E. Anderson, who sold general merchandise, and B.H. Wakeman's near the depot, and a store owned jointly by Sidney Hames and David G. Hames, Sidney Smith and David Hames. In 1888, A.C. Unger took over the hotel, billiard parlor, and the livery stable from William Bateman. William Parsons, son of Marshall pioneer Urban and Nancy Parsons, opened yet another grocery store, and Mrs. C.T. Parsons started a millinery shop. In 1889, Thad Bigelow manufactured cigars in his factory just at the south edge of Marshall. Gustav and A.J. Kaiser sold and repaired farm implements, and Frank Kaiser ran the Marshall Cheese Factory. In 1884, James Stokes became the agent for the Deering farm equipment and carried a complete line of implements, ranging from reapers and corn planters to cultivators and thrashing machines. John Hebel also sold farm machinery in 1885, and D.E. Palmer set up a machine shop in 1888. Matt and Frank Duane opened a cigar and confectionery stand on the south side of Main Street in 1889. Among the most flourishing businesses at the time was that of Sam Blasco. Working for Blasco at the time was an energetic young lad named Ernest A. Sanders.
I don't know if that guy is so energetic anymore. I was born in Marshall, August 5th, 1859. I was a graduate from the Marshall Academy. In 1872, at the age of 13, I went to work for Sam Glasgow, who supplied Marshall and surrounding farming community, plus all the way to Watertown with commodities. The annual sales were between $35,000 and $40,000. Later in 1881, I started clerking, and in 1885 made the decision to buy out Samuel, opening my store in the Medcab building in Deerfield Road. Within this time, Harmon McPherson and I were happily married. 3 years later, it was necessary to construct a new building on Deerfield Road and Main Street. Now, 2 years after that, we constructed a new home at 119 West Main Street. Part of the new store would serve as the post office in the future. Our son and daughter served as postmasters in their later years. We sold dry goods, groceries, clothing. We bought and sold all kinds of farm produce. This was the largest market of farm produce in this part of the state. Our slogan was, "We buy and sell everything." After being in business 28 years, we decided to sell to Frank Coleman, who was an employee of ours for a number of years. My good friend George Gibbs rented some space above the store. he became a very prominent physician in Marshall. Now and then people would catch colds, flu, measles, and so on. The doc would prescribe medicine. Some of the stuff didn't taste very good. I was one of his patients once in a while. My wife liked to use her own remedies. She used soda, vinegar, cloverine salve, Sloan's liniment, and Lydia Pinkham pills. Dr. Gibbs, built a new home at 304 West Main Street. The Marshall Record in the last part of November in 1897 stated that the Gibbs had the most handsomest home in Marshall. Well, my wife is at a women's church meeting, and I have to catch up with the gossip in town. Then I go home and take care of our cats.
Throughout the final decade of the 19th century, Marshall bustled with activity. Under the guidance of Pastor Causi, the first meeting of the Evangelische Lutheranische St. Paulus Gemeinde, St. Paul's Lutheran Church, was formed. That was in 1888, and services were conducted in that old Baptist church where St. Mary's Hall is now. They continued to worship there until they were able to build their own building in 1894. In 1899, the Marshall Village Band was organized, and a modern woodman camp was organized in 1890. With the organization of a band, we really needed a bandstand. So Mary Wakeman and Susan Hatch each donated a small parcel of land to erect a bandstand, and the magnificent bandstand was built in 1895. It remained a familiar landmark in Marshall, downtown Marshall, for 70 years until it was moved here to the park. In 1891, there was a flourishing tobacco warehouse on Depot Street. It had lapsed for a few years, but now it employed 60 people. And Cyrus Clark opened a writing school. Horatio Cowan owned a shoe shop. The Marshall correspondent to the weekly Waterloo Democrat noted, and I quote, "Because houses were renting for the high sum of $6 to $8 a month, someone ought to open a boarding house." In 1891, the enrollment at the 5-year-old Medina Free High School was 46. Catherine Cohen and Kate Oberbeck formed a partnership in the millinery business. Charles Aspinwall opened a drugstore in the Lindsay Building, and William Porter, you remember William, Butcher and Bame all had thriving ice businesses. William Raymond opened a furniture and undertaking business in 1895. And in 1895, also, a stage and a dance floor were added to the town hall. The village continued its prosperity in 1896 when Warren Kelly established a drugstore and would continue in this location for the next 45 years. It was also in 1896 that John Copeland and Albert Deppy bought John Deppy's interest in the blacksmith shop and a carriage shop and added a new line of McCormick Deering farm machinery. The Wilbur Lumber Company opened a yard in Marshall. A.D. Kelly was the foreman, and they prospered, so they added another shed to the property. I hate to tell you this, but I'm out of numbers here. About this time, another prominent man was involved in the history of Marshall. His name was David Hames, and Here to tell you the story of his grandfather is Mr. Tracty, who is Mr. Haynes.
I'm David Haynes. I was born in September 21st, 1845 in Ballincollig, Ireland. My father, Charles Haynes, was a guard at the Stirling Castle, and he lost his life during a fire at the castle in 1855. He had distinguished himself at this time as he was in charge of removing an immense amount of powder that was stored in the castle. I was always mighty proud of my dad. Many of our relatives had already left for that great new country called America. So just 5 years later, after the fire and my father had passed away, my mother decided to take that long journey across the ocean to join them. This was quite an adventurous trip. I was a young lad of 16 years old, and although it was a long trip, I recall many interesting happenings during our ocean trip. So in 1861, when Mother and I arrived in Wisconsin, we made a home in Waterloo for just a short time before we moved to Marshall. It was here that I spent the rest of my life. I married Mary Jane Agnew on January 2nd, 1882. Mary and I had 4 daughters and 1 son. I was only 25 years old when I owned my livery stable in Marshall on Depot Street, now Hubble Street. Matter of fact, it was just across the street from where my grandson William Tracty now lives. I continued to operate the livery stable until about December of 1882, when I decided I wanted to change my life's work. So I purchased the building, which is now the pub, from William and Nettie Porter and Jim and Christy Lindsay. I purchased this building for $1,000, and I opened up my general store here. In July of 1883, I decided I'd like to have some access to the Monticello River behind my building. So I bought the 2 lots behind there for $35. During the time I operated the general store, I was a town supervisor, an assessor, treasurer, village trustee, remaining very active as a community leader. It was my privilege to serve as postmaster of Marshall for more than 22 years, from 1889 to 1893, and again from 1897 to 1915. During the time I was postmaster, the post office was located in the same building with my general store, and I continued to run the store, assisted by my daughter Ruby, who had also served as a postal clerk. The people in the rural area were really ecstatic. They were elated when rural-free delivery was started. Imagine delivery to your front door out in the country. Marshall was also designated as a postal savings office in June of 1910. Coming to this country from Ireland, I can truthfully say that this is a great country. I'm thankful that Mother made the move to come to Wisconsin. I think I hear the train in the distance, so I suppose I better head back and see what's doing at the store and the post office.
Not only was Mr. Haynes a prominent citizen in Marshall, but Marshall could boast a number of professional people. In addition to the pastors of the various congregations, we had a veterinary surgeon, George E. Allen. He also ran a livery stable. Dr. Frank Tilton opened an office, and together with Dr. Beebe, they served the community as physicians. George Norton practiced law and specialized in collections. Dr. Wright opened a dental office in 1886. It was a prosperous time. Buildings were being erected, people were moving to town, and prosperity continued. Mr. Tracty will continue the narration.
The village had continued to prosper in 1896, and Lorna Kelly established a drugstore. He would continue in this location for the next 45 years. So much for prosperity, so much growth. But then, disaster struck the community once again in the form of a devastating fire. In August 1896, flames shot out of the roof and windows of several downtown businesses. Firefighters rushed to the scene. Citizens came from everywhere to help. Before it was over, 4 downtown stores had threatened the entire business district on Main Street. The Arians building occupied by Snyder Brothers as a general store, Charles Hart's restaurant and grocery, Matt DeWayne's residence and barber shop, and W.H. Raymond's furniture store all went up in smoke. This was the area today which would extend from the post office up to Burke Olson's grocery store. Imagine the total loss in that fire was at that time was $12,000. As the 19th century draws to a close, Charles H. Lake purchased a Marshall record that was founded 2 years earlier. It was reported that a 159-acre Choice Medina farm, including the house, the barn, and other outbuildings, sold for $10,000. In 1898, John Lindsay announced that he would build a new hotel on the burned-out site of the Arians building. His wife, Christy Lindsay, joins us now.
Good day. My husband John and I own several buildings in the Marshall area, and now it is my pleasure to tell you a little bit about John's life. He was born on July 10, 1837, in County Down, Ireland. He was educated in Ireland and learned the trade of harness maker in Glasgow, Scotland, where he went at the age of 15. He came to the United States in 1854 and settled in Milwaukee for 1 year. He then moved to Marshall and opened a harness business, which he sold in 1861. Later in 1861, he went to join Marshall's company and fight in the Civil War. He fought in 19 battles and was severely injured in Virginia, and then released from the war in 1864 from Pennsylvania. He moved back to the Marshall area and opened a general merchandise business. He also opened a boot, shoe, and harness business. Later in that year, he built a hotel. He was postmaster for 2 terms, one in 1880 for 4 years, and another in 1893 for 4 years. John served on almost all of the town offices throughout his life in Marshall, including town treasurer and chairman of the town board. Of all the buildings John and I owned in Marshall, his greatest achievement was building a 2-story brick building on the corners of Main and South Beebe Street, location of the present post office. The northeast corner of the building had a huge vault installed in it, home hopefully for a future bank. In the front west section of the building was a general store where John and I sold general store merchandise. The rest of the building was a 14-room hotel, complete kitchen, large bath, 1 large bath, clothes closet, dining room, and clothes press. Yes, we had 1 large bath. At the time, it was said to be one of the greatest buildings in this area of the state. Well, it has been a pleasure chatting with you and telling you about the life of my husband, John. But I must be going now, hopefully to see you all again soon. Goodbye.
Today we have brought you some of the early heritage of Marshall. This is but a brief history as we tried to visualize Marshall from 1837 through the 19th century and bring to you a few of the outstanding citizens of that era who were responsible for starting our Marshall on its way to the community that it now is, having been rescued from the ashes of Bird's Ruin. We are deeply indebted to the early founders, and today we have shared in their early struggles of life in a new country. We know that there are many more who helped to carve a village of the future from the wild wilderness. It was in 1837, 11 years before Wisconsin became a state. And after our cutoff date here at 1900, there continue to be many more who influenced the growth of the village we now call Marshall. Our thanks to all of them. Our thanks to you, their descendants, and their followers, as we recognize our heritage at this sesquicentennial celebration. I'd like to introduce the cast today. Naomi Plucker as Tabitha Bird. John Doyle as John Douglas. William Scala as Asshel Hansett. Roger Johnson as Dr. Beebe. Wayne Sherry as William F. Porter. Jim Huggett as Samuel Marshall. Joel Friedel as William Henry Porter. Sue Zingsheim as Sarah Napton. Charles Hahn as Ernest A. Sanders. Joy Schmidt as Mrs. Christy Lindsay. And myself as David G. Hames. We have some of the direct descendants of some of these people. Carissa Porter is a granddaughter of William Henry Porter and a great-granddaughter of William F. Porter. She will be at our performance this afternoon. I'm sure there's members of the Napton family out here, and be sure to stop and visit the Napton genealogy display in the shelter house. I'm honored this morning to have my sister, Eleanor Chokti, and my brother, William Chokti. We are the grandson and father of David G. Hames. Is there anyone else present who might be a descendant that was not portrayed in our skit today? If so, stand up. Lenora Retzlow, at the young age of 92, is it, or 93? 92. Isn't that great? Thank you very much for attending our skit this morning, and we hope you enjoyed hearing it as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Thank you. Pass the word around that we will have another performance this afternoon at 2 o'clock and tomorrow afternoon at 2:30. Thank you.
What'd you think?
Very nice. They really worked hard.
Very good.
Very interesting.
$6 million.
I'll have to check your case.
Sure. Efficiency study.
On the belt, please.
Thank you.
Michelle, Jake's still holding on line 4. Okay, tell him I'll be there in a minute. Thanks, Alice. All right.
Hey, what a game. Yeah. Did you see that? Sorry about your luck. Come on. Hey!
Back away from the console. Right now.
Hello, Jake. Hey, I've been trying to reach you all day.
I've been trying to reach you for 4.5 years. I haven't changed my mind. I'm picking up my things after karate class.
No, don't even try getting to class. You won't even make it to Queens.
What are you talking about?
Honey, all the downtown exits are closed. Something real big is going down. We have had explosions on every major route.
Are you serious?
A lot of people have been hurt. Now do me a favor. Find a hotel and stay in town.
You gonna be okay?
I'm fine. I'm up here. It's you I'm worried about.
Thanks. I can take care of myself. Hey, listen, Jake, I gotta go. The bank's closing in 3 minutes, and it takes forever to get through security if I don't get out of here in time.
Yeah, I'll be flying past your door in a couple minutes. Wave, huh?
Don't count on it. Bye, Jake.
Nick, the loading dock's down.
Station 7?
Your monitor's out. Everything okay down there?
Everything's fine. Must be a problem in the circuit.
We'll send somebody down.
Okay.
Go.
Remember, you keep your masks on until the building is secure.
They tripped a silent alarm.
Mr. 2, we have 2 minutes to get up to that control room. You all have your assignments? Let's go.
Rear entrance secured.
Hold your position. Got 15 seconds. Go.
Come on, baby.
Federal Reserve Security, this is McCarthy? I know, I'm sorry. I accidentally bumped the alarm. My apologies. Security code? Certainly. (175) Michael 3, Victor 432. Well, I'm glad it was a false alarm. Hey, with that traffic out there, you guys would have a hell of a time getting over here. Bye. Cut all alarms. Police, fire, smoke. Cut all unsecured phone lines. You two, go to the vault. You, take these guards to the hostage room. Come on, let's go. Gentlemen, we're in.
3 here. Found a woman's shoe. Still warm.
Find her.
Yes, sir.
Control, this is Air Downtown.
Lieutenant, it's Gorski.
I'll take it. Gorski, this is Acting Chief Bain. I sent you to traffic to be grounded, and I'll be damned if I'll let you disobey me again. Now you get back here. Somebody else can fly that chopper.
It looks like we've got criminal activity on the roof of the Federal Reserve.
What the hell are you doing there? You're supposed to be at the Holland Tunnel. Just get back here.
Did you copy me?
Hey, did you copy me? That's an order. Gorski? Gorski, do you copy? I want you grounded now! Gorski!
Idiot.
Fishers, collect from Dean?
We accept.
You do? What are you sending?
It's for Carlos.
In California?
It's a book about maturity.
He can't buy a book about maturity?
Today, families are making all kinds of U.S. calls. So AT&T True Reach Savings saves you 25% on all of them when you spend just $25 a month.
I miss you so much. Even 2,000 miles away, Jimmy. Privacy? I'm gonna call you day and night, every hour.
Hour? Savings on all kinds of calls. That's your true choice. AT&T.
Little Caesars needs a celebrity for their new stuffed crust pizza combo. They don't charge a lot, so they can't afford a big name. What do you say?
Dynamite!
You still got it! They don't charge a lot, so they can't afford a big name. You're perfect. Knievel! Are you feeling it, Evil?
Little Caesars large cheese stuffed crust pizza and cheese stuffed crazy bread carried out just $8.99 or have it delivered. Delivery.
Now, to each man who shaves, there's an edge all his own. Only Edge Gel has 8 custom formulas to fit every shaving need. From tough beards to sensitive skin. For a close, comfortable shave, get an edge of your own. Ultimate closeness, ultimate comfort. That's the Edge. And for dry skin, try new Edge Extra Moisturizing Formula.
Is there a cat food that helps maintain cats' urinary tract health?
Cat Chow Special Care reduces urinary pH and provides low dietary magnesium. Purina Cat Chow Special Care brand cat food. Better care makes better cats.
Hey gang, today Lenny here is going to do 50,000 reps of my Habit Back Plus. Where's the machine? I'll be right back.
At Target, you'll find everything you need to stay fit and healthy, like the Cardio Glide exercise machine by Westlow, Warner Vision's workout videos featuring Tony Little and Tammy Lee Webb, and the Body by Jake Ab and Back machine.
If you fit, you can do anything. The savings really measure up at Target.
NBC Must See TV Tuesday is reaching new heights. Ow! On an all-new Wings, Roy's reunited with his long-lost son, that big guy from ER. And last week, 25 million Earthlings watched Third Rock from the Sun. Now, see what everyone's talking about and why the critics call it a hit the size of Jupiter.
I'm his mother. I thought you were his sister. Sister, mother, whatever.
Then, an all-new Frasier's dumping Niles for a new best buddy.
I'll just go home to my Maris. Oh,
That's right. Followed by an all-new Larroquette, all-new NBC Tuesday.
This week, the showdown begins. I am an innocent man. Gonna be here for a long time. As the trial is about to unfold. Days of Our Lives, NBC Daytime.
Hey, this dress really hides your age spots. Have your fingers always been this wrinkly? Are you retaining water?
Ew. Your hand is so clammy. This stone makes your hand look even more delicate.
Need 5 extra chances to get something right? Try new Wild Bingo. 5 extra chances to win up to $10,000 on every card. New Wild Bingo from the Illinois Lottery.
So if you don't spill anything on this, we can return it, right?
Whoa.
The vault closes in 10 minutes.
I know.
Mr. 3 here. I got the girl. I'm bringing her down. I don't got any time for any funny business.
Neither do I.
Three here. Don't move.
closest and we can kiss this job goodbye.
I know it's the right combination. It has to be.
Got it. 7:51, 17. Hurry, go.
The door's secure.
Open that door, Mr. Two. In each tray, gentlemen, you will find over $25 million. Our own modest fee for this little caper. The black cards with the currency identify the serial numbers of every bill. You bring those cards to me, Mr. 5, Mr. 6, and Mr. 7. Start loading up the cash.
The girl got away.
Why didn't you call for help?
She broke my headset, sir.
Mr. 8, Mr. 9, there's a girl running loose somewhere upstairs. Find her!
There's another one. A cop. Traffic control, he landed his chopper on the roof. He must have seen me grab the girl.
And ready for help? You were this close! Where is he?
Inside. He came in through the loading dock door.
If he landed a helicopter on the roof, how the hell did he get to the loading dock?
On the fire hose. He saw my face.
Mr. 1. He's heading for the coin room.
4. Go with him. And this time, you better kill him. Mr. 10, go to the loading dock. If that door is open, make sure the damn thing's closed so it won't open again. We've got a problem.
You know how I feel about problems.
Take a look out your window.
Where's the cop?
About to be terminated. The question is, has he radioed for help?
I'll find out.
You know, you assured me this kind of thing wasn't going to happen.
Somebody screwed up.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
I'll take care of it.
Damn it! Love this glass.
I thought you guys were only good for parking meters and telephones.
Here are the cards.
Mr. 5, that cop's armed now. You take care of him.
Yes, sir.
And at that price, one can be sure that it has been made by the skilled Großzimmerner craftsmen. This is top German engineering, not your typical assembly line work made in Taiwan.
Das ist normal arbejde, wie et andet arbejde er.
Technically complicated devices like the penis training apparatus or the pneumatic inflatable penis are demonstrated in the store.
Ich verkauf's wie ein paar Strümpfe. Ich mache mir da keine Gedanken drum, was jetzt jemand damit anfangen könnte. Das einmal weiß ich's, zum anderen würde das zu weit führen. Dann hätte ich den Kopf nicht mehr frei.
Not all sex on television need be about physical satiation. Highbrow sexual programming is flourishing. In the British network documentary, The Penis Unsheathed, infamous academic Camille Paglia freely enthuses about her favorite organ.
The penis. Should we keep it or should we cut it off and throw it away? I think that this is not in the interest of the human race. We want a hard penis, we want masculine vigor, and I'm afraid that in order to get men macho again, we may have to endure a certain amount of instability in sexual relations. That is, there may have to be a kind of honorable truce between enemy camps. So what would be my advice to the sexes at the end of the century? I would say to men, get it up. And to women, I would say, deal with it.
There are plenty of highbrow penises on parade on the German program Liebesund.
Dem guten alten Jean-Paul Sartre würden die Haare zu Berge stehen, die Schamhaare. Da wird ein
In this
Stück von ihm
episode,
aufgeführt,
they visit a
und was sehen
fast
wir?
and loose
Statt
production of a play by
Existenzialismus,
philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. On a similarly elevated plane, the Australian documentary Star Bodies explored the complex link between astrology and sexuality.
Star Bodies is a journey of self-discovery for the girls. Along with them, we'll be exploring their dreams, goals, moods, ambitions, and who are their ideal partners. We are exploring human nature. Astrology is an ancient pagan psychology
Filled with shots of heavenly bodies, it scored astronomical ratings. In Berlin, sex guru Andro and his tantric love commune produced programming for German cable television that teaches the viewers not just to get physical, but to get metaphysical. This is sex for the soul. There is Andro's erotisch massage. Even more hands-on is Tantric Abundance, a do-it-yourself guide to ritual sex where you can get in touch with yourself or with someone else. Viewers can also phone in for one-on-one sexual guidance.
Manchmal gehen sie dann auf die Suche und denken, wenn ich mir eine Frau kaufe, dann kaufe ich mir vielleicht gleich 2 oder 3.
But despite these heady shows, the lure of the lowest common denominator still prevails, as demonstrated on England's network television. On Channel 4's Cardinal Knowledge, the bottom line is just that. Bottoms.
So, now it's time for Spot the Bot, or Whose Bum Is It Anyway? The round where you have to pick your partner's posterior from our cheeky lineup. No sniffing allowed there, girls, please. Now, if you care to look at our screens, you'll see 4 bottoms, 2 of these bottoms belong to Richard and James. So your job is to spot the bot. I think I'm going to start with you, actually, Sarah.
I'd go for number 2.
You're going to go for number 2.
Yeah.
You think that's Richard, do you?
Oh,
hello.
Hang on, wait, I've actually suddenly realised...
What have you spotted?
I've spotted the dimple on number 1.
Oh. Right, I'm going to have to hurry you. Which one?
Okay, I'd actually go for number 1.
Thing is, I was going to go for number 1 as well. Well, you can both go for number one if you feel absolutely categorically that that's his bottom.
Yeah, I think it is.
And behind number one, it is in fact James. So, Marion, you were right. And sadly, Sarah, you were wrong.
Not every bottom on England's Channel 4 is a couch potato. Takeover TV, a show that consisted of viewers' videos, was even hosted by a brassy young butt.
Hello and welcome to Master Television, Takeover Television, where you get a chance to actually get involved in the heady world of show business. Unfolding in front of your eyes for your delectation, we're rustling up a veritable smorgasbord of eyeball-popping, tonsil-tickling televisual treats.
The result was a national scandal, since the naked butt belonged to the son of a prominent government MP. The government was less amused when the same network, Channel 4, featured this dynamic duo, a pair of singing anuses from the Canadian musical Zero Patience.
Are you awake? I never sleep. Want to talk? What's your beef? I'm a pro at this game and I'd love to chat. One asshole to another about this and that. I tell you I'm no expert, I'm hardly one to talk. Getting poked is problematic, I'm not crazy about cork. You don't like getting fucked, I haven't heard that before. One asshole to another is the thing I most adore. In theory, it's no...
Call it bottom rock or hitting rock bottom. Broadcasting authorities reprimanded the network for the musical sphincters.
You're an asshole, such an asshole. You regret being so uptight. I can't help it, I'm still English. My sincere apologies, good night.
Where do we go from here? As every variety of sexual programming floods the airwaves, from bouncing breasts to high-jumping drag queens, from naked talk shows to javelin-tossing cartoons. Television is tuning in and turning on to sex. But one thing is certain. When it comes to turn on TV, we ain't seen nothing yet. And for a sneak preview of the future, meet Professor Von Klonk. He is the host of a mock sex education show, distributed throughout Europe and the Far East. After lessons in all the imaginable and unimaginable aspects of love, he wraps things up, as we do, with a song.
Tease the little man, tease the little man.
Come on.
Tease the little man, tease the little man.
Come on.
Oh, Derek, you are desperate. I like sex.
Come on.
Be careful. Oh, Derek, you are desperate. I like sex.
Come on.
Be careful. And it's the move for you, my dear. Bondage, Derek. Bondage. And
Brothers and sisters, I humbly request your assistance. No! I am high bidder. We cannot permit this. She claims every prize.
Am I not within my rights? It's not the prize that is the strong. Is it not the law? Brothers and sisters, I humbly request your assistance.
that thing.
Isn't that good?
Hope and Gloria, followed by an all-new home court, one great hour of comedy.
I'm moist with anticipation.
NBC Saturday.
From the Channel 5 newsroom. Day 2 of testimony in the James Jordan murder trial, and the defense poses the question, is Jordan really dead? We'll have the latest. Then have Illinois riverboats become safe havens for illegal gamblers? A Unit 5 hidden camera investigation. Also, new troubles for Governor Edgar's McDome proposal, plus celebration on the Northwestern campus as Coach Barnett says he'll stay, and actor Mark Harmon turns into a real-life hero. Tonight at 10 on the Channel 5 News, committed to Chicago.
Okay, now, this is what a human sees. This is what a cat sees. What a human sees, what a cat sees. Human, cat. When a human sees Johnny Cat, a cat sees clean, because Johnny Cat is specially formulated to neutralize ammonia odor for a litter box cats love. Remember, what a human sees is not what a cat sees. Johnny Cat, how a cat sees clean.
In a perfect world, there's perfect toast, perfect grades, and the perfect job. There are no hassles in a perfect world, and nothing ever breaks. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule, which is why you'll be happy to know you'll now find the full line of dependable Maytag appliances at Best Buy. You'll also find no payments and no interest for 1 year on all Maytag appliances. The world's not perfect, but with hassle-free appliances now in the hassle-free store, it's awfully close.
Allison Rosati, today on the Channel 5 News at 4:30.
You're watching NBC.
It was good.
Glenn Holland knew exactly what he wanted to do with his career.
Why'd you become a teacher?
I was hoping it would give me some free time to do some composing.
Until life stepped in.
There's something wrong with Cole. I don't think he can hear.
It challenged him.
Why is every other child more important to you than your child?
I'm a teacher.
You are his father.
I'm both.
It pushed him.
I will use anything to teach a student to love music.
But he had the determination to overcome it all.
You love music and you made the kids love it with you.
Hollywood Pictures presents Academy Award winner Richard Dreyfuss.
If you have the passion, if you have the hunger, then you ought to do what you want to do, no matter what anyone tells you.
Of all the lives he changed,
I would like to dedicate this song to my son.
The one he changed the most was his own. Mr. Holland's Opus, rated PG. Sneak preview Saturday, January 13th.
There are many prescription pain medicines, and a doctor can prescribe any of them. Yet 82% of doctors surveyed have prescribed Arutis. And now, for the first time, it's available in a non-prescription strength. New Arutis KT. It's so potent, just 25 milligrams is as effective as 400 milligrams of Motrin IB, 440 of Aleve, or 1,000 milligrams of extra-strength Tylenol. New Arutis KT, the potent medicine for pain.
Enjoy yourselves, everyone. Some spread, huh?
Yeah, too bad I've only got 2 hands.
That's why I always bring an extra pair.
At Taco Bell, we're really piling on the bacon. From the BLT soft taco, to the bacon cheeseburger burrito, to the chicken club burrito. If you love bacon, you're gonna have your hands full.
Want anything while I'm up?
No. Bill, pass me a burrito.
The sizzling bacon menu, starting at just 99 cents.
Sunday, an hour of must-see TV starts with an all-new Mad About You course in Baby Making 101.
Just be strong. The eggs should be in by this afternoon.
Where is it now? Chicago?
Then it's an all-new news radio on its new night.
Yes.
And they're selling the station?
I'd like to raise a practical question. Why, Jimmy? Why?
Mad About You News Radio, NBC Sunday.